Let's do big picture. Let's start with the Democratic side. I mean, first of all, what a successful barnstorming tour here for Vice President Harris and her new running mate, hitting battleground state after battleground state, drawing these huge crowds, sharpening their message. And yes, in Arizona, that's important. The Vice President saying, look, I was a border state senator. I can talk about immigration. And here, this is a deal that was on the table, authored by one of the most conservative Republicans in the Senate, Lankford of Oklahoma, and Donald Trump killed it for political gain. And if she can keep hitting that message, those numbers in that poll we just showed will continue to close. I mean, I don't think there are many Democrats who think they're going to win on the issue of immigration, maybe not even win on the issue of the economy, but if they can mitigate the damage, and then Trump's advantage in those two categories shrunk dramatically from the lead he had over President Biden. That's significant. And we have seen now, we talk about trend lines on the show all the time in polling. Yes, those three states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, they're all still within the margin of error. They're all still close. But the trend is heavily towards Harris, and it's rushing towards Harris in recent weeks. The vice president at this point throwing the equivalent of a no-hitter in the first 3 weeks of her campaign, hoping to keep that going with the Democratic convention next week. She will have obstacles in front of her, no doubt, but right now she's on a roll. George Conway, not on a roll. Donald Trump, who is imploding. And there's been some terrific reporting over the weekend. The New York Times had a great story. I've been talking to sources who back up what Joe is just saying about how the Republicans are freaking out because Trump can't stay focused. We had that unhinged news conference last week. We had these fundraisers where he's giving private remarks, talking about crowd size, doubling down on his attacks about the vice president's identity, and then culminating in that Truth Social post, which I have Truth Social, I'm sorry to say, and I triple checked it to make sure it was a real post on his site, and it was real. And George, we now know that at this point, Donald Trump is so rattled about crowd sizes, he's taking up conspiracy theories from the fever swamps of the right, elevating it, maybe even believing it. It just reeks of desperation.
Yeah, as I've been yammering about for 5 or 6 years now, he's a deeply unwell man. He is a deeply psychologically disturbed individual. If he were a member of your family, you'd be staging an intervention and taking him in to a psychiatric hospital. And if Melania and Ivanka and Eric and Don Jr. care about their father, and I assume their father and husband, I assume they do, they would be doing that if they could. He is, as I've been saying, a narcissistic sociopath, a pathological narcissist, and a sociopath as defined by the American Psychiatric Association. And these are, historians will tell you, the traits of authoritarian dictators throughout history. And what we're seeing now is, as you put it, an implosion. And this, I believe, is what ultimately was always going to happen, the final implosion of Donald Trump. I mean, it's like Hitler, when Hitler was moving around divisions that didn't exist in the last 10 days of the war in the Führer bunker. I mean, he has completely lost it. This post is beyond question delusional. But it was also inevitable, because what's happening here is he realizes he's gotten under more pressure than ever, because he's not just running for the presidency, he's running for his freedom. He's going to go to jail if he does not win the presidency, and he can see that now. And that's why he's doubling down on the unreality. It's partly for self-soothing, partly it's just because he can't help it. He's a pathological liar, being a sociopath. And what we're watching is we're going to make fun of it because it helps provoke him into self-destruction, which is what the country needs. But it's actually very, very sad.
Well, and I will say, Charlie Sykes, you don't have to have George Conway's point of view, and you don't have to be voting against Donald Trump to look at what happened this weekend and not be horrified. That is the reporting. Republicans absolutely horrified at a time where they need him to act rationally, at a time they need him to push back hard against Kamala Harris. He's going in the direction that they believe is the most destructive. And you can go back, as the New York Times neatly summarized, the past week and a half it's been terrible for him, where first he questioned whether Kamala Harris was black or not. Laughable for a woman who was in a historically black sorority at Howard University and has identified as a black woman her entire life. And then he goes to Georgia, and not only does he insult the extraordinarily popular Republican governor of Georgia, but he insults Brian Kemp's wife, which enrages Republican women across the state. And now, of course, this obsession at fundraisers that's unnerving his biggest supporters. He wrote a letter, I'm sure you saw this, to one of his biggest contributors insulting her, Miriam Adelson, and the widow of Sheldon Adelson, scaring some campaign workers into believing she won't contribute to him in the future. And now he's coming forward with the AI-generated stuff. And so Republicans fearful that he's doing the exact opposite of what he should do. This morning, the Wall Street Journal editorial page is suggesting that he attacks Kamala Harris on health care. With all due respect to the Wall Street Journal editorial page, I don't think that's going to stem those 15,000 person crowds. But I must say, were I a Republican strategist right now, I wouldn't know exactly what tack to take, because this is so reminiscent of how we Republicans were feeling in the run-up to the 2008 election. There was a freight train going, 200 miles an hour, and Republicans had no idea how to stop it.
Yeah. And if only they had been warned. And by the way, as we're watching this, decomposition meltdown by Donald Trump, notice that not a single prominent Republican is looking at this and saying, hey, let's get off this train. This is deeply wrong. Let's, go in a different direction or change my vote. They're completely locked in. I also agree with you that what's really rattling Donald Trump is that this has become a cultural phenomenon and not simply a political phenomenon. But I want to go back to what George was saying. Yes, it is sad, and we can make fun of it. It is alarming, but it's also profoundly dangerous what is going on, because you look at that insane tweet, and it's not just that he's going down this rabbit hole of fever swamp conspiracy theories. He's using this as a way of saying that the Democrats are cheating, that Kamala Harris should be disqualified. Look, put this in the larger context of what's happening. This is pre-election denialism by Donald Trump. It's no mystery. Donald Trump is never going to graciously concede defeat in this election. He is already laying the groundwork for what's going to happen after November. And I think this is going to be an extraordinarily dangerous period. He has election deniers in key states. His base is psychologically not prepared for him to lose. And as George mentioned, this is a desperate man. Donald Trump will not simply lose the election. Donald Trump knows that if he is not elected president, he may be going to jail. He will do and say anything. And you see in that tweet, not merely the fact that he is rattled and losing it, but that he's already coming up with his lines for why he can deny the results of the election, how Kamala Harris's nomination is unconstitutional, how this is being stolen, all of that in advance. So no one should be surprised or think that this fever is going to break on November 5th, because whatever happens, we are about to head into a very dangerous period in American politics, led by Donald Trump and obviously assisted by Republicans who simply have decided that they're not going to draw the line.